SotoMayor received her bachelor degree from Princeton University in 1976. She received her Juris Doctor of Law degree from Yale Law School in 1979. There she was editor at the Yale Law Journal. At a recruiting dinner at Yale, the subtle hint that affirmative action had been the reason SotoMayor was accepted into Yale deeply upset her. Therefore, she filed a complaint and received an apology letter back from Yale. After graduating with her doctorate degree, SotoMayor became an assistant district attorney in New York. Then, in 1984, SotoMayor left to become involved in acting on the board of directors for several private practices. SotoMayor was nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York by President George W. Bush in 1991. She was able to put her doctorate education, dedication to law, and years of experience into action. She was nominated by President Bill Clinton in 1997 to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Final confirmation for this position took place in 1998. She left this position in 2009 when nominated by President Obama on May 26, 2009, to the Supreme Court. Senate agreed in August 2009. Her position was confirmed as Supreme Court Justice with a Senate vote of 68 to 31. Her background and education both rely on one another in order to offer our nation an individual ready to seek justice. This brings me to the opinion that SotoMayor will stand for marriage equality and will fight to protect their minority freedoms and constitutional rights.
Sonia SotoMayor has steadily risen through the ranks of the United States legal system. During her career, she has served at many levels, including being appointed by former Republican President George H.W. Bush to the Southern District Court of New York. She has ruled on everything from business law to matters of professional sports. In 1995, she ended the baseball strike and was hailed as the savior of baseball. Interestingly, in 1998, SotoMayor was nominated to the Second Circuit Court by former Democratic President Bill Clinton, a nomination which she won with overwhelming bipartisan support by a vote of 67 to 29.
Sonia SotoMayor was born in the South Bronx of New York on June 25, 1954. She was the oldest of two children to parents Juan SotoMayor and former Selena Baez. Both of her parents were born and raised in Puerto Rico and moved to New York during World War II. Her father only had an education of a third-grade level, was a tool and die worker at a factory, and spoke very little English. Her mother, Selena, was a nurse at a methadone clinic. The SotoMayor family lived a very modest life, living in a well-maintained, racially and ethnically mixed housing project close to the Yankee Stadium. Her father died when she was at the tender age of 9, a short year after she was diagnosed with type 1 childhood diabetes. After the passing of her father, Sonia's mother enrolled both Sonia and her brother in private Catholic schools and pushed for Sonia and her brother to become fluent in English. Selena also emphasized what Sonia would call an almost fanatical emphasis, the value of a good education in her children. Sonia was always a fan of reading and was infatuated with the Nancy Drew book series. She wanted to pursue a career as a detective, but with her limitations due to diabetes, was told she could never follow that line of work. She became intrigued with a television show called Perry Mason. Perry Mason was a dramatized court show which sparked SotoMayor's interest in criminal justice. As Sonia reflected in 1998, I was going to college and I was going to become an attorney, and I knew that when I was 10. 10. That's no jest. Based on Sonia's upbringing, I hypothesized that she will vote no on Prop 8. Sonia had been attracted to justice at a young age and is quoted saying, "I do believe that every person has an equal opportunity to be a good and wise judge, regardless of their background or life experiences."
Some of Judge Sotomayor's more prominent opinions on discrimination concern people with disabilities. In one case, Judge Sotomayor ruled that a law school graduate with a reading and learning disability was entitled to extra time in taking the bar exams. After the Supreme Court decided that people are not protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act if they can function normally by wearing glasses, taking medications, or otherwise compensating for their disabilities, it told the Second Court to reconsider its decision in this case. Judge Sotomayor again found that the woman was disabled and must be given accommodations, writing that test scores alone were not enough to diagnose a disability. Well respected by both sides of the aisle, at the age of 54, Sonia Sotomayor became the second youngest justice on the Supreme Court, only 7 months older than Chief Justice John Roberts. Although many of her rulings have been controversial and pro-liberal, one fact seems to stand out. 90% of her rulings have been consistent with the decisions of Supreme Court Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer, both of whom are expected to uphold the previous ruling that struck down Proposition 8. Therefore, I believe that Sonia Sotomayor will vote to uphold the current Supreme Court stance on Proposition 8 and the Defense of Marriage Act.
Sonia Sotomayor has been found to lean liberally in her voting record, which is of little surprise as she was appointed by President Obama. However, critics of her appointment have accused her of also being a judicial activist, meaning that her interpretation of the Constitution can be influenced by the spirit of the times and the need of the nation and often conflict with the decisions of her colleagues or other branches of government. Faced with these accusations, the Brennan Center for Justice studied her 10 years in the Second Circuit and found her to be judicially mainstream, voting with the majority on 98.2% of constitutional cases. In Ricci v. DeStefano, Sotomayor upheld the Civil Rights Act to protect minorities in the Connecticut Fire Department. In Pappas v. Giuliani 2002, Sotomayor ruled that an off-duty policeman of the NYPD making anonymous anti-Semitic remarks was wrongfully terminated and protected by his First Amendment right of free speech. In Snyder v. Phelps, the Westboro Baptist Church protested homosexuality in the military at a soldier's funeral. The father of the soldier sued the protesters and the church, but the court protected the church's right to free speech and public protest. Though this went against gay rights, it showed Sotomayor's commitment to the First Amendment rights. In Walmart v. Dukes, Sotomayor dissented with 3 of her colleagues that Walmart discriminated against female employees by not promoting them to managers. This case lost, but her decision to dissent showed a sympathy towards minority rights. Sotomayor has shown a leaning towards First Amendment rights in her voting record, as well as showing favor towards the rights of minorities. Based on these leanings, she is considered to be left liberal on the social scale. With her voting record, I predict that Sotomayor will vote to overturn California Prop 8 as being unconstitutional. Through her activism for the First Amendment, she has shown her belief in individual rights which will benefit gay couples seeking the same rights as heterosexual couples. She has also shown sympathy to minority rights as a minority herself. This will help the ruling of Prop 8 as gay couples are the minority in this country. Finally, as the Brennan Center found, Sotomayor is likely to vote mainstream on major Supreme Court decisions. As a liberal, she is one of 6 justices likely to support the overturning of Prop 8.